Hey everyone and welcome back. It's Gina from orchidandopal.com, and today I want to welcome you to another fun collaboration that I'm doing with Sam and the team from Sam's Bead Shop, and specifically from their November 2023 Mookaite Memories themed subscription box. Now, if you've already gotten your hands on this box, you'll already have everything you need to make this necklace and earring set that I will show you in just a minute, not including the findings, of course, but you'll definitely have all the beads you need. And it looks like there are some extras available of this particular box located on Sam's Bead Shop, so I will leave the link to that right down below. In addition, if you'd like to sign up for a Sam's Bead Box subscription, you can do so at any time, but December 9th is the last day to sign up for the December box. And if you sign up after that, you'll be getting January's. Of course, the themes are different every single time, but I can't recommend Sam's Bead Box enough for the high quality materials, including tons of Czech glass in lots of different shapes and styles, and gemstone beads and pendants, and more. So if you'd like to sign up to the subscription, I have a coupon code. It is ORCHID, ORCHID, that will save you $5 off your very first box. And the link to that and the coupon code will be down below as well. At this time, they offer international shipping, so you can just check out their site for the specific cost to your location. So right now, let me reveal the set that we're going to make today. And also in the video description, you can find the list of all the materials you'll need that you can pick up separately as well. This particular box was themed around the actual Mookaite stone, which is stunning and includes some beautiful shades of color for the fall in particular. We'll be using the 6mm rounds of those, as well as the copper-plated hematite cubes in the 3mm size, the Czech glass melon drop beads in purple silk with that copper ribbing, and I picked out the lavender-colored 11-0 round Miyuki seed beads from their house-made mix, which included a number of different colors. Now we're going to be making the actual beaded component for this necklace today, and you can finish this off however you like. I have this example done in the chain where I have just included a couple of jump rings that are slipped inside those hematite cubes at the end and act as a connection point for some antique brass chain. Feel free to get creative when you're finishing off this necklace. Instead of chain, you could definitely use some type of silk cord or ribbon. You could also use some colorful soft flex just in its raw form. Or you could continue beading the length of necklace all the way to the back. At the end of the video, I'll also show you how to make a pair of coordinating earrings, and all you'll need for those are an additional pair of ear wires of your choice. To get started, I'll be using the 6-pound Fireline today, the 0.006 inch diameter. You're welcome to use anything that is similar to that, whatever you're comfortable working with. And I'll be using a size 11 beading needle today. You want to have a little bit of bead weaving experience, ideally, but you don't have to be an expert. This is actually a great project if you are newer to bead weaving and a great way to play around with the right angle weave technique. So if you'll be making this set today with me, what you can do is go ahead and thread your beading needle with a comfortable length of beading thread. I like to start out with about a wingspan or so and then add on more if I need to. So trim off that segment and thread your beading needle, and then we can jump into this tutorial. To begin, we're going to pick up an alternating set of 4 of the Mookaite beads. And by alternating, I just mean I like to pick up different colors, not all the same on each set of 4. So once you have those on your needle, go ahead and pull them down. And leave yourself about a 12-inch tail because we're going to be using that at the end, and that'll just make it a little easier. We won't have to add more thread later on. And just holding this together, take your needle on your working thread side and go back through that first 6mm Mookaite round to form these into a loop. Just like that. And if you pull on your tail thread and your working thread, you should have this little loop of 4 beads. At this point, I'm just going to hold those together with my thumb and my forefinger and sew under that thread bridge, which is right between those next 2 beads. Make a loop and then sew through that loop to make a half hitch knot. We're going to pull tight, and that just gets our beadwork in place without us needing to use a stop bead. Continue sewing through your next round. And now we're going to add in one of our 11-0 seed beads in between each of these round beads. So picked one up, went through the next round, and we're going to pick up our next one. And sew through the next round. And repeat that until you have 4 of these seed beads in place, pulling tight after each addition. So here's our 4th one, and we're going to go through the next round bead, and then this time the next seed bead that we get to, and pull everything tight. Now we're going to add on a smaller segment of right angle weave using just the 11-0 seed beads. So we want to pick up 3 more of those 11-0s, and then we're going to sew back through the 11-0 that we're coming out of. We'll create a smaller loop of these seed beads right off of that one. I want to tighten up these Mookaite rounds a little bit more, so I'm actually going to sew through those 4 once again before we proceed on. I'm going to skip those seed beads and continue pulling this tight as you go. And then once again, exit from that next 11-0 that you get to. Before we move on from here, what I did in the example necklace is actually tack down one of these cubes at the back of each of those smaller right angle weave sections using the seed beads, and that actually adds some more strength to this necklace, even making it reversible. If you wanted to wear it with those cubes on the front, you could certainly do that. But let's just string one down. And you can see I'm coming out of the seed bead down here. We want to look over to the opposite seed bead, so the one on this side, and we're going to sew through that one. We're going to start to tack those cubes down in this manner. So it's sitting loosely in place, but let's go through that next seed bead that we get to and continue to pull this tight as you go. Now sew through that cube again. And this time we're going to sew down through that first seed bead on that right angle weave section in between those rounds. And we've just crisscrossed through that cube, and it's going to tack it down right at the back of that. And then to move on, let's continue through our right angle weave of the seed beads, going through our next one down there at the bottom, pulling tight. And then let's go through the one that is now at the far end. And I flipped this over so we can see the seed beads on the front there, and I feel like I just want to reinforce that section one more time, just of the seed beads. So I'm going to go through those 4. And I still want to be coming out the one that is at the end, all the way on the right. So we're off to a good start, and now we're just going to continue adding a similar sequence of Mookaite rounds and seed beads to make one side of that V in our necklace. So now we can pick up 4 of our Mookaite rounds, Again, I like to try to alternate the colors a little bit if possible. And you can pull those down to your work. And we're coming down out of this seed bead here. We want to wrap those Mookaite rounds in this manner so that they're going to form a loop. And we're going to return through the 11-0 that we were coming out of. Pull that tight and you have your next section of rounds in place, but we want to continue going through those again and add our 11-0s in between each of those rounds. So we're going to go through the next Mookaite bead right there. Pick up an 11-0 and sew through the next round. Pull tight, pick up another 11-0, sew through the next round, and one more there. And then return down through the 11-0 at that connection point, pulling tight. So similar to what we did before, we can just continue going through the next 2 rounds. And you're welcome to skip that next seed bead in between. And then sew up through the next 11-0, just like that. And now I'll show you again what we did just like in the previous seed bead section. We're going to pick up 3 of our 11-0s and sew back through the 11-0 that we're currently coming out of on this side. We can continue on through that next 11-0. Then flip over your piece. And this time before we tack down our cube bead, let's just go ahead and sew through those seed beads again one more time to reinforce them a little bit. I like to go through these seed beads one at a time. And we'll come out of this one here at the bottom. And this is where we'll pick up a cube bead and pull it down. And we want to sew through the opposite seed bead, so the one over here, to tack down our cube. We can continue sewing down through our next 11-0. Sew up through the cube again. Holding that together with your thumb and your forefinger, just loosely in place at the moment. And then sew down through the 11-0 on the other side, which is in between those 2 rounds. So that is our next cube in place, and then we can just sew up through that next 11-0 on the bottom, and then up through the one that is all the way on the right. Hold that together and pull it tight, and we'll flip that over. And you can see that we have our next section in place, and there is a little bit of play here in the thread. So actually, if you see that, because everyone tends to work with their own natural tension, if you have some extra room and you want to tighten that up, just go through those beads again. That's what I'm going to do. Just following the thread path through the seed beads first and sewing through those 4 rounds. And you're welcome to do that in the previous step as well before you move on. It's totally up to you. So going through that 4th round and then up through our seed bead, starting that next section. then over and through the next one, and down through the 11-0 all the way on the right, and pull. So now at this point, you can go ahead and make another section with the Mookaite rounds, another section just like this with the 4 seed beads, and then one more section with the Mookaite rounds, which will form the center of that V shape, and that's where we'll pick back up, and I'll continue to show you how to complete the next steps. And welcome back. So once you have on your 4th section of Mookaite, we can go ahead and add in those 11 O's like we did before. So I'm going to pick one up, go through the next round, and do that 2 more times. This time going through that next round plus the next 11-0. And then going around again, it'll get a little bit different because we're going to continue through these next 2 rounds and create our next section of seed beads coming off of the one that is next to that other section right here. So instead of doing our next section of 4 seed beads down here, we'll do that right here, and we'll build up from that point. So pick up 3 more seed beads and sew through the one that you're currently coming out of, and continue on reinforcing those. I'm just going to sew through those again. Of course, pulling tight as we go. And I'm coming out of the one that's there at the top. I'll just flip this over. And just like we did before, we'll add a cube on the back. So I'll pick one up, and I'm going to sew through the seed bead that is opposite to the one that we're coming out of. I'll sew down through the next 11-0, up through that cube again, and then down through the 11-0 that is in between those 2 rounds. Pull everything tight, and then flip your piece over, and then continue sewing through the next 2 seed beads so that you're coming out of the one that's all the way on the right. Just like that. And once again, if you find that you would like to reinforce the previous sections of rounds, you can do that. And then let's continue sewing through those seed beads again, because we can actually go ahead and add that drop bead at the bottom of that Mookaite section that is preceding this. Just go through the seed bead, the Mookaite round, skip that next seed bead. We'll go through the next Mookaite round and that next seed bead that you get to. And this is where we can add our drop bead. It's going to come off of this section down here. We can pick up 4 of our seed beads, pick up a cube, then one of your drop beads starting at the narrow end, and 1 more cube bead. And then pull those towards your work. It's going to sit like this. Those seed beads will wrap right around that Mookaite round. At this point, we're going to sew back up through the drop bead. So skip that cube that's at the end and sew directly up through the drop. Pull that tight. And also sew up through your next cube bead. To finish this section, we'll pick up 4 more seed beads. and then sew up through the one on the other side that's already in place in between those next two Mookaite beads. And then here, just to reinforce the section, I'm going to go back through this Mookaite round, pulling this all tight as we go. And then I'm going to sew down through the 5 seed beads on the other side, as well as that drop section again, including those 2 cubes. So go through that cube on the bottom again, return up through the drop bead and up through the cube that's at the top of it, pulling tight, and then we're going to sew up through the 5 seed beads on the other side. Continue on through the next Mookaite round. And then follow the thread path so that you're coming out of the seed bead all the way on the right of this next section. There we go. So now we have more than half of this done. And since you already know what to do from this side, in order to make it symmetrical, we're just going to build onto that section of seed beads with 3 more sections of Mookaite with the seed bead sections in between, just like we did before. So you can back up the video if you need to. I'll show you how to do this one more time on this side and then just finish that up with the same length of Mookaite beads. And by the way, you're welcome to extend the length of this on either side, making that longer, as long as you want before finishing that off. That's totally up to you. But let me pick up 4 of these beads. Pull those down. And I'm going to return through the same seed bead, just like we did before. I'm just going to go ahead and reinforce these while I'm here. So just sewing through all 4 of those Mookaite rounds again. And then through the seed bead. And then through the Mookaite, picking up an 11-0 and then adding one of those in between each of those rounds. This time just going through these Mookaite beads, and then I'll end up through that 11-0 that's on this side. And once again, we're all set up to pick up 3 more of our seed beads, return through the one that you're currently coming out of to create the next section, and you get the idea. So you'll continue by reinforcing that, adding a cube to the back, and by making 2 more sections off of this side to add to the length so that both sides are symmetrical. So once you've done that, we will meet back and then I'll show you how to continue on and complete this necklace. All right, and welcome back again. So I'm going to show you how to finish up one side, and you're going to do the exact same thing on the other side where you have that long tail thread. You'll pop a needle onto that and just do the same thing. So when we're coming out of this seed bead here, you can pick up 3 more and create that last little loop on the end and reinforce these. So just go around those again. And no need to add a cube onto the back of this section. Just returning through the initial 11-0 and then gonna sew through those next 2 to come out of the one that's all the way on the right. So this is where we will pick up a cube bead, one of our drop beads going through the narrow end first, and 1 more cube bead. You can pull those down And then skip the cube bead that is last and go through the drop bead again, pulling tight. Sew through your next cube bead, and then sew through the opposite end of the 11-0 that's right in front of that. And that connects that last drop bead on this side. And what you can do now is just sew through that section again to reinforce it. Going through that cube, then back down through the drop and through the cube. Pulling tight. That cube should sit just like this. And we're actually going to use the whole of this cube to add a jump ring directly onto that to finish our necklace. Now I'm going to return down through the 11-0. That's right there. I'll sew around the seed bead section again. And this is where you can make a couple of half hitch knots to finish up your thread. I'm going to go under the thread bridge there and make a loop and then sew through that, for example. I'll just continue around the seed beads again. I think I'll make another little knot right here, so go under that, adding that knot, going through the next 11-0, and then through that one in between the two rounds, and then continue on through this Mookaite bead, and I think I'll make one more half hitch knot right there in front of the seed bead. And I'll just go through the seed bead, through the next Mookaite round, and through a couple more beads as my thread is getting shorter. I'll end right there. And then at this point, you can just trim off the excess thread or burn your thread. And like I said, you'll just pop a needle onto the other side and do the exact same thing to make this symmetrical and finish it off. Once you've done that, we'll meet back and I'll show you how you can add your jump rings and some chain as an example to finish off this necklace. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with a simple pair of earrings. All right, to finish off your necklace, like the example piece, you'll want about a 12-inch length of chain. I also have 5 6mm size jump rings, a lobster clasp. I have another segment of chain that has some larger, more open links for a piece of extender, and one of those little cubes that I'll add to the base as a decoration. You also may want some wire cutters and some of your other pliers to connect these findings. And of course, there's multiple ways that you can do this and finish this necklace off, so have fun with that. But these cubes are positioned in a way that makes them pretty easy to slip on one of these jump rings. So we can open one up by just gently twisting it like that a little bit so it's open enough where you can take one end and just slip it through the hole of that cube bead like this. And then you can attach one of those links of your chain and close that back up so that those two ends meet as best as you can. And then I'm going to take the other end, I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Slipping that jump ring in and then going through the other end of that chain and then closing that jump ring back up gently. And then in my example, my chain is all in one segment. I like to just find the center of that and then cut that with my wire cutters. Now I've got one piece on each side. I'll add another jump ring to one end of the chain as well as a lobster clasp and close that back. And then I'll take another jump ring and then slide that onto this side attach the piece of extender chain and then close up that jump ring. And then finally, with our 5th jump ring, I'm going to open this one and then add that to the very bottom of the extender chain piece, feed on one of those little cube beads, and close that up. So that's all there is to it, and we can attach that lobster clasp. And now our necklace is complete, so we can make our pair of earrings to finish this up, and that's what we'll work on next. So to make your earring on a new piece of beading thread, you can pick up 4 Mookaite rounds and then pull those down towards your tail thread. Leave a 4 to 6 inch tail. You don't have to leave a extra long tail this time. And just hang on to that while you sew through that very first Mookaite round again to form these beads into a loop, just like that. And then holding on to the beads and that thread, I'm going to make a half hitch knot right there in between those 2 Mookaite rounds and pull nice and tight. Then I'm going to sew through the next couple of beads. I'm going to make another half hitch knot right there. Sew through the next 2. And then this is where we can start adding in our seed beads. So like we did before, we can pick one up and sew through the next round. And then when you get to your last section, you can also proceed through that first seed bead. And then that's where you can pick up 3 more seed beads and then sew through the one that you're coming out of. So you have a little picot that you formed right there. And then reinforce those. So we're going to sew through each one of those seed beads again. And then sew through the next 2 so that you're coming out of the one that's all the way on the end. And that's the spot where we can add in our drop section. So we're going to add in a cube. Then we'll go through our drop through the narrow end first, and 1 more cube. And then you can pull those down towards your work. And then sew up through the drop and the next cube bead. And pull that tight. And then we're going to sew through this seed bead right here in the opposite direction. Just like that. So our drop is in place. Let's just reinforce that by going around those one more time. Back up through the drop and up through the next cube, pulling tight. And then back through that seed bead in the opposite direction, up through the next one, and then the one in between the 2 rounds, and then we'll continue through our next round on the side. Pull everything together again and make sure that looks good. And it does. So what we want to do now is get up to this opposite section on the top. That's where we're going to form our loop to attach our ear wire. And I can skip that next seed bead going through the next Mookaite round. And then I'm ending up out of this seed bead right here at the top. And this is where I'll pick up 4 seed beads. Then sew through the seed bead we're coming out of. And then I'm going to go up through those next 2, down through the 2 on the other side. And then through the original seed bead again, and I'm going to reinforce this by sewing through those one more time. I'm going to return down through the seed bead in between the rounds. And then this is where we can make a couple of half hitch knots with our working thread. Do one right there. I'm going to go through the next round. I'm going to go through that seed bead right there instead of skipping it. I'm going to go through the next round on this side. Again, pulling everything tight. I'll make another knot right here. And then sew through a few more beads, and we can trim off our working thread at that point. Once you've done that, you can also put a needle on your tail thread that's remaining and weave that around a little bit and then trim off the excess. And your piece is ready for an ear wire to be inserted right at that location. So now if you have an ear wire like this, you can just take your pliers and twist that open a little bit. And then we're going to pop that loop on, just as simple as that, and close it back with our pliers, twisting that in that direction. And now you can just back up the video and make another earring to finish your set. So that concludes this tutorial. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed checking out this creation from the materials of the November Sam's Bead Box. Once again, if you'd like to subscribe for future packages, you can use the coupon code ORCHID, and you can find that as well as the link to the subscription right down below. You can also find a link to their shop where you can find possibly some extra November boxes if you'd like to get your hands on these specific products, but also check out their shop where they have additional extras and lots more, of course, that you can pick up. And you can use other types of beads and stones to create this necklace as well in a totally different colorway. So if you decide to make one of these, or if you have made one of these, I'd love to hear about it. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Also, give the video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel while you're here, and feel free to share the video with your other beading friends. That's all for this time, but I will see you all again real soon. And until next time, I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day. And as always, happy beading.